This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
The following is an environmental autobiography. The discussion is on how growing up in different cities impacted my career choice. Having been born in Yangzhou, a town city in China. Growing up in Yangzhou gave me a thrill and a sense of belonging. I nostalgically remember running after butterflies and striving to catch them. The morning breezes were always there, and I could rise early to catch the breeze. The outdoor environment was still great, and there was no fear of security, one of Yangzhou's greatest attributes. Various poets have praised the city, and it boasts of having ancient architecture, which is very exciting. I never thought that old structures could be that magnificent. It stirred a deep desire in me to know more about how to construct such beautiful buildings. The city was terrific during autumn. The memory of snow on top of the buildings still lingers in my mind. Spring was even hilarious, with the flowers blooming and painting the surroundings with a yellow touch. This continued until the age of 6 years when my parents moved to Shenzhen City in China. This was a completely new environment for me. However, many of the norms and customs of the people were similar to those of Shenzhen. The architecture and general appearance of the city were strange to me. It was made up of skyscrapers, and I had been used to small condominiums in the previous town. The humanistic aspect of life in the city was even more astounding, with people working hard and being less concerned with the affairs of others. Everyone was a stranger to one another. People in this city had come from various places and were, therefore, unfamiliar. There was no strong sense of community compared to the previous town where I had lived. I think this stirred in me the individualistic self. Though I initially loathed this city, the magnificence of the skyscrapers and the fact that the town had been modernized within 30 years made me fall to become an architect. How can a village be transformed into a city? I would wonder. Apart from the tall buildings, Shenzhen had a beach where our family would hang out. I nostalgically remember how we used to walk with my parents along the coast. This was a spectacular scene, and I loved it. My pleasure of seeing the sea in Shenzhen was not going to be eternal. I had to move to New Zealand for my high school. It was stunning to be in a new place, but for the first time, the change of environment had a mental effect on me. However, the city was evidently cleaner and more modern than the previous towns in which I had lived. It was surrounded by spectacular sea, the beaches looked nice, and the building was even taller than those of Shenzhen. However, the fact that I was unable to communicate clearly in English made my stay in New Zealand dull. I could hear the teacher gesticulating words I could not understand, and some of my classmates would not communicate with me coherently. It wasn't until I saw a beautiful rainbow that I recognized that my fortunes would change for the better. In our native country, a rainbow is usually associated with good luck. I knew I was going to be lucky. I became familiar with other students from the diasporas who came from China, India, Europe, and Africa. This exposed me to many foreign people who had different beliefs and customs. Nevertheless, I learned to appreciate diversity. Unknowingly, my English had also improved dramatically, and I was able to communicate more clearly than before in English. I longed to be through high school. The management was usually strict and did not allow us out of the dormitories after 9. I remember nostalgically how excited I was when I finished high school. I felt like I had been relieved from a yoke. Little did I know I would soon miss my friends, teachers, and the beautiful beaches of New Zealand. After a successful application, I was admitted to the University of New York. I was awfully disappointed by how I found New York. Ironically, I am usually disappointed by every city I move to at first, then I later fall in love with it the way I did in Auckland, New Zealand. For New York, I think I had many expectations, which is why I was disappointed at first. I could not come to terms with having rats running in the subways. The last time I saw a rat was in Yangzhou, the village city where I grew up. The streets of New York were boisterous compared to other cities where I had lived. The dilapidated houses in Brooklyn were disappointing scenarios that I had to come to terms with. However, the beauty of the city would be noticed. I remember admiring the tall skyscrapers in Manhattan. Shopping in Manhattan was beautiful, and visiting the American Stock Exchange was undoubtedly unforgettable. The Brooklyn Bridge and the Carnegie House are some of the buildings that confirmed that I was designed to do architecture. I thereby settled to pursue interior architecture to fulfill my childhood dream of becoming an architect. My exposure to both outdoors and indoors makes me think that exposure to both outdoors and indoors is essential. For instance, my stay in boarding school meant that I was not exposed to the outdoors. This was good for concentration, especially when one is doing something that requires no interruption. However, I personally associate outdoors with freedom and indoors with confinement. I usually feel more independent when outside than when I am indoors. No wonder I was excited when I saw a rainbow when I was in New Zealand. I could not have seen the sign of good fortune if I had been indoors. That is why, as I pursue interior architecture, my aim is to see more houses and buildings that create an outdoor environment inside the building. Some of the symbols that are meaningful to me because of the outdoor environment are beaches and parks, which I associate with relaxing. Others are dorms and unventilated houses, which I associate with confinement. Not to forget the rainbow, which I associate with luck, to imply that confining me in a building makes me feel that I have lost my freedom, even though that is not true, whereas when I am outside, I think that I am free, which also might not be accurate. This soul-searching has undoubtedly made me aware that I am inclined to prefer the outdoors rather than an indoor environment. In conclusion, there is a relation between the surroundings we grow in and how they affect personal pursuits and desires. Without ever growing up in a city, I probably would not have become enthusiastic about buildings. City life certainly influenced my decision to become an architect. Exposure to the outdoor environment is thereby of critical influence in one's life. Did you like this environmental autobiography, cities and career sample? To get more works like this one, make sure to check out the database of academic paper examples at ivypanda.com. You will find thousands of samples for all your study needs.